is coming to you from the beautiful metaverse. And welcome to Midday with Reverend Don. And if you would like to join our conversation here at Midday with Reverend Don, you can do it by typing your comments or questions into whatever platform you may be happening to watch this on. It will show up in my chat room and I will respond. And welcome to my new office. And hello to Michael in the chat room. It's good to see you. This is my first day broadcasting from the office. We got our main internet hooked up yesterday. Therefore I am back to my normal setup. I haven't really set, obviously I'm still moving into the office, still moving into the house. The lighting I think could be better, but we'll work on that. So in successive days, you will see changes, but this is the office. It's a lovely blue and white, as you can see. I rather enjoy that color scheme. And this is where you will be seeing Midday with Reverend Don for the most part as we go forward. Of course, there may be occasions where we are in other places. We shall see. And hello to Bradley in the chat room. And Bradley remarks that they love my outfit today. Thank you, Bradley. Today, of course, is June 1st, so we want to salute the rabbits everywhere. And it is the beginning of a new month. And it's a lovely time. I want to thank all of my patrons at Patreon. I want to thank those who have taken part in the new tiers I've created. I want to welcome new people. And Bradley has placed very cute little rabbits into the chat room. Thank you, Bradley. I'm very fond of the whole rabbit thing. I am a water rabbit by birth in the Asian system of astrology. And of course, as a Corellian, I have an affinity for the white bunny. And so rabbits are cool by me. And of course, the great god Osiris of ancient Egypt was portrayed in the form of a rabbit when he was portrayed as an animal, one of the animal theophanies that he had. And in that form, he was called Unefer, the beautiful being. And there is a short story. One of my favorite books is called The Arbor House Necropolis, and it's a compendium of short horror stories. And one of them is a takeoff on Alice in Wonderland, but in a dark vein. And it features, of course, the rabbit, who is leading her on into the other dimension, who makes clear an identification with Osiris, the Lord of the Dead. So rabbits have all kinds of interesting symbolism. So as I was saying yesterday in my Patreon, I'm introducing a number of new features. And hello to Janet in the chat room. Good to see you, Janet. We must get together now that I'm in the area. I was speaking with Susan Dancing Star earlier today about getting together, one of our local people. I'm hoping that hoping she'll be interested in maybe doing an interview with us about her long career in metaphysics. And you know, I've been very grateful for all the help I've received during the move and since, with Sir Laurie and Sir Chad and Sir Jason and Sherry and Chris and John. And it's just been a wonderful time. And of course, Sir Edward. And of course, the wonderful Marianne. And it was very good to get to see all of these people, very kind of them to help out. And it's a wonderful community here. And we will be seeing much more of it as we go forward. We'll be seeing, hopefully, some of the local metaphysical sites, some of the local metaphysical activities. And as I've said, I plan to adapt my life more toward the idea of, we're using the term reality show. but sharing more of the things that I do, um, now that I in fact have more time to actually do things, which is a big difference. I'm working at present on a book project, which I'm hoping to be able to have an announcement about tomorrow. And as I was saying, I've added a number of tiers to my Patreon, and one of them, of course, we have the Monday night chat that we've always had. We have the first look, which is the baseline for Patreon. We have added a monthly newsletter, which I'm expecting will probably be next week. We have added a monthly seminar, and I'm looking for that first seminar to be June 24th, Saturday, June 24th, and dealing with the nature and practice of magic, the nature of the universe, and the practice of magic. So that is my first seminar, but we'll talk more about that as we go forward. And I will be very interested in hearing what you would like to see for seminars. We talked a little bit about this yesterday. It's very clear that one of the things people would like to see um, are practical issues, also historical issues. So there'll be a lot of interesting things we can talk about. Hello to Ivy in the chat room. Good to see you, Ivy. And the bunnies are multiplying throughout the chat room, which is very joyful. And, as I've said, I very much enjoy spending this time with you. I'm very happy to have the ability to interact so readily with people. And Bradley says, I will be there. It sounds like a good time, and I believe it will be. It will be good to have you there. And now the seminar is not exclusive to Patreon, but it's provided to patrons at that tier. I believe there will be tickets for sale to other people, but for people at that tier, it's theirs to attend every time for free as part of their Patreon package. And one of the things I'm looking to be doing now is more teaching, more direct teaching. I mean, an argument could be made, I've done a lot of teaching over the years, but it's been a number of years since I've done direct teaching. And we'll be doing more of that now. And I will tell you that when I teach, I like to teach through dialogue. I like to have a lot of back and forth with the people who are there, partly so that I can answer their questions, which I might not anticipate. But of course, the thing about, and we were talking about this, Sir Edward and I the other day, that when you teach, there are a couple of ways to go about it. One of them is to have everything written out beforehand, everything carefully planned, and the other is to know your material so well that you can simply speak about it, which is what I generally do. I will probably strike a middle ground, which I've done in the past. I will have the thoughts will be organized. There'll be an order to progress, but the words will not be planned in advance. And there will always be the opportunity for questions to move the subject to places I might not have anticipated, because I found that people's questions sometimes are not what I would have thought they would be. So I like for the student to have the ability to help to focus what is being discussed. Now, of course, that's a fine line, because sometimes people will pull you off into left field a little more than you would want to go. So you have to be able to pull things back to the central subject. But I think it's very important, really, for teaching to be a back and forth. I mean, the thing about teaching, and one of the things I've tried to do in my writings, is that I'm not trying to tell you what to think, but how to think. This is why, if you read the various degree lessons, they talk about various different ways that people look at things. They talk about how different people will adapt them in different ways, how you can approach these subjects in different ways. because there isn't just one way of doing hardly anything. People have found all kinds of ways, and other people are going to find ways nobody else has done before. And I've said in the past that if, as a teacher, if I return to my next life and find myself studying um, in the Corellian tradition and nothing has changed, I would be disappointed. I would hope that people would take those teachings and expand them and grow them, because the point of a teacher is that each generation stands on the shoulders of the previous generation. Um, the idea which you hear in certain religions that you must not add to or subtract, but repeat exactly what you were given, I find an abomination. Of course you're supposed to add to it. Of course you're supposed to grow it. Any given teaching is an aspect of that moment in time. And I think this is something which the pagan community as a community is finding itself having to deal with, because a lot of what thinks of itself as the pagan community was established in the 60s and 70s, when certain things were very important to people, which aren't necessarily so important to the current generation, which has other priorities. And some parts of our community have moved forward and embraced these changes. Others are finding that difficult. Um, and I think that it's always important to embrace the new, to expand what you do, to expand how you look at things. And having come to the latter years of my life, it's not necessarily my job to do that, but it is my job to let others do it, to encourage the next generation in making it their own, in taking it forward. Hello to Deb in the chat room. It's good to see you, Deb. It's not enough to simply repeat. Life must expand to be living. Life is a state of constant growth. And if you're not growing, you're not living. And Janet in the chat room says, this is what I was teaching my daughter last night. I was teaching her some of the exercises in the first degree lessons, and I noticed her style was different because I had taught her rather than going by the video. And this is exactly so. And different people will do it differently. Different people will find certain things are easier. And I'll give you an example out of my own life. Because I had these lessons and learned so early to work with visualization, guided and otherwise, the visualizations that I encountered in other places were sometimes awfully slow for me. Doing visualizations in a public group where everyone has a different skill set, the visualizations were naturally slower than what I was used to. And so I'd be running far ahead, even if I didn't intend to, in doing guided meditations in this kind of setting. And but this is only to be expected. And when you do that kind of public guided meditation, you have to understand different people are at different places, and you have to be introductory enough for those people who do not have the skill highly developed. And you also have to realize that there are others who will. And so you have to make sure it moves at a pace that that they don't fall asleep, which is always a hazard of doing meditations, although usually not public ones. But it is a difficulty. However, I have found when you're leading a meditation and there is energetic work involved, you can usually feel in a physical sense when it's time to move on. And until you feel that, you should continue, assuming that at least one person is still working on it. But when they are ready to move on, I've found you can usually feel it yourself. I don't know if that's always true, but I've found it to be often true. And I think that in teaching people this skill, it's what I would say, wait till you have the feeling to move on and you'll find that it comes. What is that feeling like? Well, it'll be different for different people. For me, a lot of things, I can just feel there's a difference. It's like something has clicked, something has contracted, um, or alternatively expanded. Um, I can feel a difference. And that's when I know to move on. When doing energetic healing, a lot of Carlians work with Reiki. I have been trained with Reiki. It's not generally speaking exactly what I do. I was originally trained with a kind of energy healing that's probably closer to pranic healing. And what I do tends to be a mixture of these different techniques that I have learned over the years. I'm not sure if there's a special word for the technique I was first taught because I was just told we're learning energy healing. But I've observed that it was similar to pranic healing. I did not first hear the word pranic healing until much later. And so I'm assuming what I was taught had similarities to, but was different. I've learned how to do Reiki and incorporated some of those ideas, but I wouldn't say that what I do for energy healing is Reiki. What I do is a system, I guess, unique unto myself, which I think is what people generally end up doing. But when I do that, there's a point where I know that I have done enough because I can physically feel it. Um, and I think that with all energy work, if you ask for that feeling to tell you, it will do so. Um, Even things like cleansing and blessing a space. Um, when I am doing that sort of work, I can feel usually when it is enough. And hard to describe the feeling, but as I say, it's a difference. And one of the things I was taught early on is that if you have a number of things to choose from, you can run your hand just above them. And the one that feels different is the one that is meant for you. And I've used this for everything from choosing stones to choosing desserts after a meal. And I have found that that feeling it will come, it is always there. But how to describe it? Um, Sometimes it's like a little bit of a physical poke or a contraction. Sometimes it's a difference in temperature. But I think the way I would best describe it is simply that it is different. And being sensitive to this sort of thing when you're doing energy work is very important. And often, in order to become sensitive to it, you have to do a certain amount of cleansing first. If you're going to do energy work, I think you're generally going to find that you have a lot of cleansing to do en route to being able to do it well. And that will usually be right at the very beginning. Um, but on the plus side, when you're first learning this, you need practice of how to do it. And so clearing your own channels is an ideal way to do that, or working with a friend. And it has the benefit not only of clearing your own energy, but teaching you how to do the work. Um, the sort of energy work that I was taught, you literally pull blockages out of the energy, which is different generally from Reiki, which is more about injecting energy. At least that's been my experience. Um, and I find the two of them work quite well together. And of course, you also will inject energy in the system that I learned, but for blockages, you pull them out. And you can tell a lot about them by how you perceive them when you do that. I've found that a brand new blockage will usually be almost liquidy, maybe mucousy. It may, and this is in terms of how it feels energetically. But as it gets older, they become stiffer. Um, we used to describe well-established but not reasonably established blockages as being like fish bones. They were rigid, but they were flexible. And then after a certain point, they're no longer flexible. They become like rocks. But all of them can be removed, some of them more easily than others. And you can learn to do this. And it's very important to do it. This is how we cleanse our energy. And the more we work with this, the better off we are. And you would think that the more you do, the less there's going to be. And in some ways, that's true. But in others, it definitely is not, because the more you do, the more you see. And it isn't that you're making more blockages as you work with more energy. It's that you're becoming more sensitive to seeing them. So if you're doing this sort of work, particularly when you're doing shadow work, which is what we're discussing in terms of removing blockages, you have to understand that it will become more before it becomes less. And it will always be there, because as long as we live, we continue to add blockages. And so this obviously will be a seminar at a later point where we talk about how to do this work. I figured starting with the nature and practice of magic, which also involves the nature of the universe, was just a good place to start. And probably the nature and practice of psychism will be number 2, which also involves the nature of the universe and the nature of incarnation, because none of these things is separate. This is what we mean when we use the phrase "as above, so below." That these things in our daily earthly life are not separate from the existential nature of the cosmos. They are part and parcel of each other. They are strongly connected. They are reflecting each other. At a certain point, you could even say they are the same. The reason magic works is the nature of the universe. And Michael in the chat room says, "I like your plans on teaching." Thank you, Michael. I think it's going to be very enjoyable. I think there's a lot to discuss, and I hope to hear from you what you want to hear me talk about, what you want to hear me teach about. And because obviously I can talk all day. I've been doing that for a long time now in broadcasts such as this, and I have learned how to speak extemporaneously on whatever subject. And so, with your help, we will focus where you want it to be. Or I'll simply tell you what I think you need to know, which might be what you want to hear. We'll find out. But I want you to know that your part in this is important, and that I want you to be part of choosing the subject matter. Because I've written extensively on most of these subjects already. What I hope to do through the teaching is, one, offer it to people who may not have had access to my writings, but also to explore elements of it we might not have covered in the writing, or in ways we might not have covered in the writing. Questions people might have that you can't really ask a book, but we can cover them in a seminar. Because, when you sit down to write a book, you try to cover everything that needs to be covered, but you can never be sure you've done that, because you're coming from your own point of view. One of the things that most surprised me when I wrote the first degree, for example, had to do with the idea of the ritual bath. People were asking, well, what do we do if we don't have a bathtub? Now, this, of course, was many years ago. Today, bathtubs are becoming less common than they once were, as people tend to prefer showers. But it had not really occurred to me, A, that people would not have a bathtub, and 2, that it wouldn't simply occur to them that instead of a ritual bath, you take a ritual shower. I believe that is now included in the writing, but I had not thought to include it. Hello to Regina in the chat room. And Regina says thalassotherapy is a great way to cleanse energy. And I believe that would have to be sea therapy. And in fact, I know people who do exactly that, go to the beach to commune with the sea, bathing and soaking in seawater, yes. And that is a great way to cleanse energy. And Maggie says, hello, Maggie. Will you be able to teach us your methods of healing in-person classes? When you say in-person, do you mean physically? And chances are that will come, yes. Um, but right now we're talking about video seminars, but chances are there will be physical ones as well. And Bradley says, your take on working with ancestors and mediumship would be a fun seminar. Yes, I think that, that's going to be an important one. Thank you, Bradley. And Maggie says, yes, she was referring to physically in-person classes. I'm sure at some point we will set something like that up. We will have to see. Right now, I'm still settling in after the move, and we'll be looking at how to do that. With the mediumship, and by the way, remember, we do have a book on a year-long course on mediumship called Medium 365 at Corellian Publishing, corellianpublishing.com. If you would like to order that, but that is by Ravenwolf Greenfield, not by me. And I find that this is a subject, like all subjects, that there are different schools of thought on. So yes, a seminar on mediumship, I think, and working with spirits and ancestors would be very important. And speaking of expansion of knowledge, one of the things I've learned from the time that I was taught, when I was taught the idea that a spirit can become caught between the worlds. But I was taught the idea that if this happens, it's the entire spirit that is caught. And sometimes I think that can be true. But generally, very often, it's only a part. And another part of the spirit goes forward, even comes back into incarnation. This is part of our shadow. And when we go back and we work on past life issues, we're working on parts of ourselves that were caught between the worlds and never left those lives. So let us say, for example, some of the most famous hauntings in English-speaking history include two of the wives of Henry VIII, Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, and their respective executions, and numerous sighting of their ghosts after their death, which means a part of their energy was caught there, as I understand. But let us say that you happen to be the reincarnation of one of these ladies. And I'm sure there are numerous people for whom that is true, which would be part of a seminar, because I believe the soul splits and multiplies as it goes. So it isn't just one person who might have that past life. But in dealing with that past life, one of the things you might do is go back and heal that trapped energy, liberate that trapped energy through soul retrieval. At which point I would assume that haunting would stop because the energy would have returned to the main soul. And hello to Charlene in the chat room, who asked if I'd had my hair cut. No, but it is tied back at the moment, and tells me I look fantastic. Well, thank you, Charlene. That's very kind of you. The lighting in here is not bad. This room has a good bit of natural light. Right now, there's no electric light on. And we're working exclusively on natural light, and I think it's showing quite well. And so these are some of the things we'll be looking at in the future. And let me once again recommend my Patreon to you. You can find it at revdonlewis.com. And we have a number of offerings there. And of course, I will be doing this daily broadcast indefinitely. I mean, I'm not going to say for the rest of my life. That's who knows what may happen in that, but certainly for a good long time. So I'll be coming to you every day here, but we also do a weekly chat room there. We do a monthly newsletter. We do a monthly seminar. For those who choose, there is a monthly consultation. All of these are at different levels of membership, and there's also a monthly surprise offering, which changes with each month. So if you're interested in that, you'll find it at revdonlewis.com. And of course, you'll also find me every day on Pagan World TV. And tonight, I believe you will find me on Tarot Thursday on Pagan World TV. Um, so, with that, I see we've come to the end of our half hour. So let us have our prayer, and then we will see each other again tomorrow. And I love spending this time with you. I thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to see you and to get to talk with you. Now, let us have our prayer. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, help us as we go forward to carry forward the good in life, to carry forward the love, to carry forward the benefits we have gained from the experiences we have lived. Help us to learn and grow and expand in our life, and help us both to see life as a wonderful experience and to experience it that way. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you now and always. And with great love and respect, may you be blessed now and always as we go forward. And I thank you, and I offer you my love, and until next time, may you blessed be.